well. Like we were right. It's hit the fan. So let's dive in and talk about it. All right, everybody, guess what? We've got one heck of a big show for you today. When I say it's on and it's World War III and things are going wild and haywire and the whole thing, it's not hyperbole. I'm not grossly exaggerating for the sake of scaring the shit out of people. So they go and buy flashlights from me. It's not that. We've got a lot of problems going on. Things are getting out of hand. The uniparty, that is the Democrats and their rhino Republican cohorts, are fucking the country up intentionally. Welcome back, folks. It is time for the monologue and the Q&A. Welcome to the biggest satire channel on the planet, or is it just the least funny satire on the planet? We're here, folks, and we're going to talk about a lot of things. Why you should have food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, and a means of self-defense with your plan. We've had this storm issue all through the holiday weekend. And now, folks, as the looters have gone from store to store, trashing property, stealing stuff, because the police aren't out, the police can't get out, people are freezing to death, and the government, well, folks, in all truth, yeah, it was a winter storm. There's lots of ice. It's very cold. Rather than get ready for it, Governor Hochul of New York State decided that she wanted to sign more global climate bullcrap legislation. Instead of doing what Governor DeSantis did when Hurricane Ian was coming down to Florida over there, he said, hey, why don't we get ready for this and call in as much help as we can get and get everyone ready and lined up for it. Instead, they just run in front of microphones and pretend to give a shit and sign a bunch of legislation. Folks, they say the pen is mightier than the sword. When was the last time you saw a pen do anything other than apply ink to a piece of frickin' paper? The pen is not mightier than the sword. The pen is a pen and a sword is a sword, and never shall the two meet. Well, except for this. Ask Nikki, ask Oliver. Never bring a pen to a gunfight. It's not going to help. Not going to help at all. All right, so Buffalo having problems with looters. Well, a store owner has opened fire on looters. And it's the worst snowstorm in 50 years, says the media. So you're telling me 50 years ago, we had a storm just like this, and before the internet, before cell phones, before pellet stoves, before natural gas lines plumbed to everyone's house, before high efficiency heaters, people managed to live and survive snowstorms just like this one. And I was talking about how 50 years ago plus, where I lived in California, used to get 5, 6, 8 feet of snow. And when I grew up there, we got 3 feet max. Yeah, there used to be some badass storms, and it's not global warming, folks, that made them go away, and it's not global warming that made them come back. It's nature and its cyclical way to do things. But anyways, attention looters and SHTF a-holes. Guess what? You want to loot? You can get shot. Second Amendment notice to you ding-dongs. Now, moving on. Oh, by the way, get your questions in. We are going to get it on. We've got a lot to talk about. I know we're going to want to spend the second half of the show with you guys contributing and participating. I have said a number of times that Zelensky, Ukraine, they're involved with the global program, the agenda, the World Economic Forum. And I got so much bullshit and grief. Oh, bullshit, John. You can't tie everyone to everything and call it all SHTF. Zelensky has nothing to do with private businesses and corporate agenda and globalist agenda. Well, surprise, surprise, surprise. As Gomer Pyle would say, surprise, 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 right? Yeah. Zelensky says that Ukraine, that would be him and his leadership, will attend the World Economic Forum meeting in January. Will the little bastard wear his khaki green woolly pulley to the World Economic Forum and stick his hand out in a bowl and say, can I have some more porridge, please? Or is he going to show up dressed in a $10,000 suit and just rub shoulders with them and say, you're welcome, you're welcome, you're welcome for supplying the money laundering, shall we say, capital of the world? I just wondered, yeah, by the way, yeah, Zelensky is one of them, and he does work with their agenda. But folks, it's not really an agenda. It is a war. The Libs of TikTok founder is, well, she's come out of the closet. She's come out of the closet with Twitter. She's come out and she's on Tucker Carlson, and she is done with being anonymous. This is a cowbell, more cowbell alert. She says, quote, I want to help people fight this agenda, end quote. It is not an agenda, though. It is truly a war. It is a social war. It is a language war. It is a legal war. It is a political war. But she's done with anonymity. In other words, another person like yours truly has come out and said, I don't care if you see my face. It is time to see the face of the opposition to your evil. And folks, that's exactly what they are. It's exactly what they are. It's not an agenda, though. It is a war. And I'm glad that she's out in front of cameras and saying, this is who I am. Let's get it on. Let's duke it out. And folks, remember, all fights, you need to be prepared, because all fights start with words, right? You're walking down the hall, someone runs into your shoulder and you're like, hey, that wasn't very polite. And they say, hey, I don't give a shit. And you start yelling at each other, getting ready, getting worked up. And eventually you're throwing dukes. It's coming. It truly is coming. Now, I've got some more big news from you. I want to have your questions down below, though. Get them in there. Uman's in the house. Nikki's out there crashing bicycles. And Jolene is, she's doing what she does. Get your questions in, though. Yeah. We just might have a couple pictures of someone pulling a rookie move. But I don't know. We can't really do that. We can just tease Nikki a little bit. I'm exaggerating grossly. She would never crash a two-wheeled object. Well, not unless her legs were too short to reach the ground. But then we're talking about height jokes, and we're not allowed to pick on people for being short because that's abusive. Angry beaver. Anyways, I'm sorry. Let us do this, folks. World War III is here. It's upon us. And Ukraine has finally figured out the peace game. But here's a little thing, folks. Get this. Ukraine is calling for peace. But first, they say Russia has to face prosecution for war crimes. Really? Russia has to face prosecution for war crimes? Hey, Ukraine, maybe you haven't heard, but the loser in a war doesn't get to define the terms of the peace and who pays and who admits what. That is the winner's role. Now, let's just say, for argument's sake, that Ukraine surrenders to Russia because they want peace. Fine. If there are war crimes that have been committed, Ukraine can go to the United Nations. Ukraine can go to World Court, and they can independently sue Russia. And so can any other nation. They can go sue Russia for war crimes. Present your evidence. But instead, they're playing this as a political frickin' game. And they're trying to say, well, once they admit to war crimes, then, right? Where's your charges? Where's the evidence? Well, if someone's word is enough, then give me a few minutes. I will take us right there. Anyways, any nation can sue Russia, and any other nation can boycott Russia, sanction Russia, etc., etc., etc. But where has this taken the world? Right down the toilet, just like Ukraine and the rest of those worthless bastards over there who are in charge at the political level. I'm not talking about the Ukraine people. I'm talking about their leadership. But wait, there's more. That's right. I want to talk about their leadership and their military and what it is and what are war crimes. I've got a little article here. This just might piss you off. Folks, the prepared mind has been right about many things. I've been wrong about a few things, but I've been right about an awful lot. Now, there's a retired colonel in the United States Marine Corps. There's lots of those, in fact. But this one's name is Andy Milburn. And he had a few facts that he wanted to bring out about Ukraine. Now, this is not some little private, right? This isn't some disgruntled staff sergeant. This is a colonel, right? Well, Colonel Milburn had something to say about Ukraine. It appears that he had something to do with training troops in Ukraine. Like he was a, shall we say, instructor. He was hired and sent over there to train them. And this is what he had to say. He had some, what I would call, colorful and Marine Corps-like observations. This is a colonel, not a private, not a sergeant. A colonel had this to say, that Ukraine is a, quote, corrupt, fucked up society, end quote, that is run by, quote, fucked up people, end quote. How is that for a man with a college education and a career in the U.S. Marine Corps? And that's his experience over there, that it's a corrupt, fucked up society run by fucked up people. Ukrainian soldiers, he says, quote, kill dudes who surrendered and commit, quote, atrocities. I think Z-Man himself, the little Z, Zelensky, did not deny that his military has committed war atrocities. Now, the Geneva Convention has a very specific rule. And that rule is you cannot refuse to accept the surrender of your enemy. In other words, when your enemy surrenders, you must accept their surrender and take them as a prisoner of war. You're not allowed to summarily kill them or kill them in any other fashion. You have to accept their surrender. Well, apparently, according to a United States Marine Corps colonel who served, retired, and worked for government contractors, he said they kill people who surrender. They commit atrocities. So if you just want to make a bald-faced accusation, right, why don't we take the word of someone who's honorable instead of taking the word of some political yahoo? Now, Colonel Milburn did an interview with Newsweek and talked a lot about what's going on. All right. It was an interesting interview. Colonel Milburn of, former MARSOC and CEO of the Mozart Group. Sounds like a mercenary group. What do we have to say? Who do we believe? Right? I don't think that I don't think that Colonel Andy is going to be running for office anytime. I don't. But it's interesting the reaction people have when they hear from people that normally they would respect. All of a sudden, they don't like what's being said. All of a sudden, they get all butthurt when they hear something other than what they want to believe. Right? I would really like to see these people held accountable. All of them. I just don't think it's going to happen. I truly don't. Okay. Let us move on if we shall, right? There's so much more to talk about. And get your questions down below to Uman. Get them down to Jolene. Just looking in here, we got Oregon Patriot, we got Nikki, we got Eli. And there's the prepared mother. There's Vincent Boyle over there in Belfast, Ireland. The Charlinators in the house. We got Christine B. Hanna and Heidi. The gang's all here and many more besides. If you are a member, folks, if you're a member of the preparedmind.club, you can be here Monday through Friday live. Get your questions in. And Uman, I think, he's getting everything set up. Oh, yeah, we got people ready to roll, ready to rock. But it's not your turn yet. No, I've got a whole lot more to talk about. Get this, folks. Elon Musk, our favorite South African turned American, who is more American than anyone in the Democrat Party. He has responded to the media's latest attack against him. And I say, just bring it on. Bring it on, man. Elon Musk says, quote, "We have only just begun," end quote. What do you think that means? Well, it means that there's been a lot of shenanigans at Twitter. It's come out that the government has funded them. It's come out that the government has backdoor access. And I know a lot of people in the government enjoy their backdoor access. In fact, that's probably the only way they like it these days. Anyways, right? They've been contributing money to controlling social media and our voices, something the government is strictly prohibited from doing. And so Musk has been releasing information, unlike Julian Assange, who did nothing but threaten and pretend and say, "Oh yeah, I've got you guys." But the truth of the matter is Elon Musk is releasing information, and it's turning out to be quite valuable with respect to what has been happening in our world. Now, speaking of this, today's revelation was that there is a Fauci fan club on a Twitter Slack channel. And I'm not a huge Twitterite, folks. I don't know what a Slack channel is other than it's probably loaded with slackers. Anyways, a Fauci fan club. It's important to note that when you have a zombie death cult that has a leader like Dr. Fauci, there's going to be people that worship that. They truly are. They're going to worship that. That is their death cult, and they like it. And things like this are going to continue to be revealed, I hope. I pray, and I hope and I pray that the American people wake the hell up. And if they don't, it's their own damn fault. For everyone on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, right? Hit the notification bell, ding, right? Share this internet address up here. Send it around to everyone. We need to expand our awareness as a country, not hide our head under the pillow and pretend it'll all just go away. That doesn't happen, folks, right? You can't be tied to a whipping post and being beaten senseless and then pretend like it's all just going to stop because, sadists are that way. Anyway, speaking of problems around the world, there is kind of a political, military third rail, and it's always been and probably always will be Israel. Israel is probably the single most hated country per capita or per square kilometer. And yeah, I intentionally said kilometer because I think they're on the metric system. Metric system. Anyways, Iran, that's right, where the Ayatollah Khomeini runs his theocracy. Funny theocracy. America seems to have a theocracy where people blindly follow socialists and worship the ground they walk on, whether they're the death cult leader or the political idiots like the ones in the White House. Anyways, back to Iran. They have threatened to, quote, raise Tel Aviv to the ground, end quote. And by raise, they don't mean lift it up to the ground. They mean burn it down. If Israel, and this is their caveat, if Israel strikes their nuclear sites, has Iran grown up enough? Are they big enough? Are they strong enough? Do they have enough technology to do what they're now promising and threatening? They're going to raise Tel Aviv to the ground. I used to think that the people in the Middle East are absolutely fucking crazy. That every last one of them have lost their fucking minds, and that they would rather die in some sacrosanct, sanctimonious, pious holy war than try and make peace with one another. It's kind of what I was thinking, right? But then I look at what's going on with Ukraine and Russia and the United States and NATO and the European Union. It seems like all of these people, the more radical they get, the more willing they are to kill everyone over, well, their beliefs. I find it to be incredibly dangerous, incredibly dangerous. But here we are. Here we are. We now have Iran wanting to join the World War III stupidity. And it's not an impossibility, folks. It is very possible that that could happen. World War I, World War II were fought in Europe and the Pacific and in Africa, North Africa, the Middle East, if you will. Right? War can spread very far, very fast. It's incredible. It'll certainly spread a lot faster than, free people who are wanting to travel. Get this, folks. And they call it travel hell. Another 2,500 flights are canceled. Now luggage is lost. Really? Really? That's what they think hell is? You've lost your luggage? Now, I will admit that it sucks. Losing your luggage sucks. But look out. It is not, that's not hell. That's not even close. Just wait to see what hell truly is. When the lights go out. Yeah. When the food stops being delivered. Now, I've talked about food prices in the past. And I have seen something absolutely astounding. And I shared it with the entire R Syndicate back crew. I went to the store to buy some eggs. Eggs. What are they supposed to cost? $1.50, $2 a dozen. Right? Well, I went to the egg section and all of the dozen egg cartons were there, but the 18 packs were gone, all but a few. So I had to reach down and reach past way in the back. And as I was reaching down and into the back of the refrigerator cabinet to get an 18 pack of eggs, because that's just how I buy them, my face was very close to the price tag, and it, talk about smacking me. $8.97 for a 12-pack of eggs. I thought, what the hell? Almost $9. So just call it $9. Round up 3 freaking pennies. It was $9 for 18 eggs. It was $6 and I think 47 cents for 12 eggs, which is probably why the 18 packs were just about sold out. Just 2 weeks ago, eggs were $3.79 a 6-pack. They've gone up $2.50 more on top of the already super inflated price. It's not bullshit. I'm not lying. I'm not making this crap up. I even sent the fucking picture to Uman and everyone else. We've got some serious problems, folks, with a lot, right? You think losing your luggage is a problem, right? Wait till you can't have scrambled eggs on a Sunday morning. And speaking of, the flights being canceled, Southwest is canceled. On top of that, another 2,500 flights. And they're saying there's an atmospheric river on the West Coast and we're going to have to cancel everything. It's more weather bullshit and blame. Now, atmospheric river, they used to call that a rainstorm. It is not Weather-mageddon. It's not that. It's a rainstorm, and a good one. folks, I remember back in, well, shit, it was, I think the early 90s. There was a year where there wasn't enough rain in California. And so March came around and they called it the March Miracle, where they got an entire year's rain supply, water supply, in a matter of, I think, 2 weeks. But back then, that was a good thing. Now it's a bad thing. Right? Make up your fucking mind. Well, we need the water. I can't tell you how many times I heard that as a kid growing into an adult in California. We need the water. We need the water. We need the water. And as soon as you get it, they're screaming, oh my God, we're all going to die from the flood. These fucking people. They are truly screwed up. Folks, I reported to you what Sergei Lavrov had to say about Ukraine getting peace. And if they don't take it, the military is going to give them the taste of something else. Sergei Lavrov, I'm not an ass-kissing fool to the Russians. In truth, basically, he's like Russia's Donald Rumsfeld. He's very stern, very serious, full of shit, Sergei Lavrov. But be that as it may, whether you consider someone who's a stern, full of shit military guy, whether you're Donald Rumsfeld or Sergei Lavrov, whether you're in the U.S. or Russia, you're in charge of a very powerful military institution that has nuclear weapons. And so anytime they say something, they should be at least listened to, if not heeded. Well, Lavrov says that the Pentagon is threatening to assassinate Putin. Now, he cites his evidence, and I don't think it's the best evidence, but evidence nonetheless. Cerveza sneeze. It's not whether or not the Pentagon really is or whether this is complete bullshit. What it is, though, is there's a ratcheting up and a continual ratcheting up of the saber rattling and the war drums and the threats. Right? Lavrov says, surrender or it's your ass. Ukraine says, we'll surrender, but only if you have war crimes trials. Russia says, you want to send Patriot missiles into Ukraine, so we're going to warm up our nuclear weapons. We got a problem, and it's not going away. It really isn't. In fact, North Korea is a little bit jealous right now. And so they're really starting to threaten the South. They sent a couple of drones over the border the other day. And here we go. Right? They want war there. They want war between Iran and Israel. We want war between China and Taiwan, and we want war between Russia and the rest of Europe. Does that sound like we're heading into peaceful times? As they can't get their shit together. Unbelievable. And so the United States of America continues to send its money. What was it? Another $100 billion being sent to Ukraine? To what? What is the money being sent to Ukraine? Somebody tell me. Anyone? Well, get your comments down below on where that money is being sent. I mean, the money that's being sent to Ukraine. What's it being used for? Well, there's a news article comes out and says Zelensky is agreed to continue using BlackRock to invest Ukraine funds. So Ukraine is investing its money in BlackRock, which is a financial institution. I thought Z-Man, old Voldemort Zelensky, I thought that the money we sent them was to be spent on weapons and training and food to help Ukraine fight Russia. I didn't know we were sending $100 billion over to Zelensky so he could turn around and send $100 billion to BlackRock to invest. They're using the money to invest? I thought it was war funding, not Voldemort Zelensky's fucking retirement fund. Really? Oh no, this is just some extra money. We were told, folks, that Zelensky and Ukraine are so broke, right, that the world has to help them out because it's just not fair. Just unbelievable. It's unsustainable stupidity. Folks, let's see what you want to talk about.
Are you ready?
Yikes, yikes, and yikes. I mean, you heard it here, folks. SHTF Central on the Prepared Mind channel, the profit of prepping. And I mean that in the most, in the most usual way. That is to say, secular profit, right? The teacher of prepping. You better get prepared. I'll tell you why. And if you don't get enough reasons why in 1/2 an hour, well, we'll be back here tomorrow for another 1/2 an hour of monologue where I just lay it all out there and say, you think everything's fine? You think the politicians in DC are here to help you? You think everything is just fine, huh? Well, I tell you what, either you wake up, give yourself a good face slap and face the music, or you can stick your head back in the sand or up your ass and just pretend like everything's fine, and you'll be mowed down at some point. You have got to get prepared. And I know that you guys that are here are. Everyone else, same story. All right, so let's get into it. Let's get into your questions. Jolene, who do we have? Jolene, I finally heard that song, and it's not a great song. Anyways, David has this to say. As long as Congress is funneling dollars to Ukraine, does Zelensky really have any incentive to surrender? What will it take? His own people uprising and protest against their own slaughter. Yeah, right, exactly. Ukraine has no incentive to, decorruptify. There's a made-up word for you. They need to stop the corruption in Ukraine. They need to remove everyone and everything that is corrupt so that any money that it creates, the country, that gets funneled to the government that's running everything, that money isn't stolen by those who are in charge of the bureaucracy. Literally, folks, the corruption. So where's the incentive if the United States is going to continue to send money over there? Right? There's no incentive for peace or surrender. Why? Zelensky is enriching himself. That's right. He's investing in BlackRock. Good job, Zelensky. How much does he get to keep? Does he send 10% back of everything that's sent over there, and he sends back 10% to happy boy Joe Biden? Right? What percent does Romney get? What percent does Pelosi get? What percent does Chuck Schumer get? What percent does Mitch Turtles McConnell get of all the money that's sent over there? I sure would like to know their numbered accounts they have, how many they have in Switzerland and other places. We don't get to know that, but I tell you what, you get to know President Trump's tax return. You bet. So what's it going to take, right, to make Zelensky realize he is harming Ukraine? He is. He's harming Ukraine. Does he give a shit? Right? Well, I don't think he does. Because if he did, he would be doing something quite different. I don't think he gives a shit. He's just throwing his people out in front of the Russians, and they're being slaughtered as they try and slaughter as many Russians as they can. Obviously, they're trying. But they're being slaughtered, folks. They're being led to slaughter. You think Zelensky gives a fuck as he goes on vacation on the Italian Riviera, as he flies to Washington, D.C., in first class on a private jet? I'm sure of it, because we can't risk losing such a great leader, right, to a terrorist act that's not going to be committed. Wow. Right. And then he shows up in Congress wearing his little green woolly pulley, his little military sweater, and pretending like he's an ass kicker. He's more like an ass kisser. Anyways, Zelensky, the people in Ukraine uprising against their own slaughter. Let's see. Number one, do the people of Ukraine have a Second Amendment? No, they don't. Do the people of Ukraine have the Declaration of Independence that they can use? Well, they could borrow ours, put their own name on it. But the Zelensky government has already demonstrated to the people his willingness to be a murderous thug. Ask everyone who's fallen under the heel or the knife edge of the Azov battalion, truly where atrocities have been committed. Right? Protect against their slaughter. The people, right? You can't oppose Zelensky or the government. You can't offer an alternative agenda or idea, or you'll be arrested, thrown in jail, have your money, your wealth, your property taken from you. The people would have to uprise. Truly, seriously have an uprising, and I just don't think it's going to happen. I really don't. I think the people of Ukraine have had their asses kicked up one side and down the other, whether it's by the Russians and the military, or whether it's by their own leadership. It's just very sad situation. Very sad. And it's going to continue because it makes some people very, very rich. What happens, though? Let me ask you this. I'm going to put this in front of you. What if America starts being run the same way Ukraine is? What if America is shown and demonstrated to be entirely corrupt at the very top? What if America were to be demonstrated with evidence, right? Shown, the whole world shown evidence that the United States of America is very corrupt? Well, folks, in my opinion, it truly is. We have evidence. We have the Hunter Biden laptop that has been ignored, hidden, thrown away, shelved, lost by the FBI. Except, sadly for them, there's copies of it out there. The evidence is that Hunter Biden, folks, has committed some serious crimes. And he's involved in an enormous amount of racketeering and illegal money handling. Right? Getting 10% to the big man. If you want to know who the big man is, just read Joe Biden's license plate. It'll tell you who the big man is. It's very corrupt here. And if you don't play along with their game, they just might send the FBI to your door to ask you some questions, to harass you, to scare you. Well, remember, folks, this is America. We do have a constitution. We do have our guns. And at some point, and I'm not glamorizing it, but at some point, someone is going to need to utilize the tools of liberty in a way that is, shall I say, unnecessarily necessary and violent. All right, let's move on if we shall. We have none other than Latin America Preparedness checking in. He says, establishment pushing for electric cars. Extreme cold weather last week proved electric cars don't work in cold weather. There's a long line in California resulting in a 10-hour wait to charge the battery. Thoughts? Well, number one, electric cars only work when electricity is available. And I know gasoline cars only work when gasoline is available. But there are long lines in California and other metropolises where there's charging stations. The infrastructure isn't here. And folks, 100 years ago, 110 years ago, there were electric cars back then. They had batteries. The only difference back then, no, it's probably more of the same thing. There weren't charging stations. There was no way to charge them. And when you ran out, you ran out. You're done. Electric cars had their chance 100 years ago and they failed. Will they fail again? Will they fail again? Because infrastructure isn't there. Well, there's a lot to infrastructure. There's a lot to transportation. There's a lot to running a country. You can't just have an electric car. Vroom. You have to have the ability to produce electricity, distribute electricity, put that electricity into usable form for the vehicle. The vehicle then has to store it in its own battery system. And then there has to be a way to conveniently, inexpensively recharge without having to wait 10 freaking hours. Well, they're not producing the electricity. Instead, they're cutting back on electricity production. Instead of investing in more electricity, they're saying, we'll just do it less. At the same time, right, they're not doing anything to help our infrastructure. In fact, we got people shooting up our infrastructure by taking out substations with rifles. Whoops. And then when it comes to the cars themselves, there's not enough material out there to make batteries for every single car that every single person will need. 100 years ago, there weren't many cars, folks. So there was never any real concern about batteries and replacement batteries and down the road batteries. And then what do you do with the batteries? Now we have some issues. We got a lot more people, a lot more cars. The nation is completely and totally reliant upon consumer transportation. We got big, big trouble. And yeah, cold weather. I think the EVs are really neat. But when I look at them, I notice an entirely different design. There's an entirely different thought process that goes into making an EV. The frame, the power, the weight, the drive mechanisms. It's taken a good 100 years for standard internal combustion engine vehicles to handle as well as they do in strange and inclement weather. What was it? What did we hear? That cars that were submerged in the hurricane, they caught on fire and exploded. There's a lot of problems with these EVs, and I'm not entirely sold right on the technology. It's really cool stuff, but you can't just make up 100 years of development and engineering. And I know they borrow a lot from the regular automotive and truck market, but the thinking is quite a bit different. Kind of like the difference between the thinking of boomers and the thinking of millennials, right? I think somebody missed a couple of days at school. All right, let us move on if we shall before I get more hate mail. We've got Mick in the UK. He says, how long is it going to be till these scumbags in power tell us we are breathing too much air and hurting our Mother Earth, and we, the population, have to be dramatically reduced to save our planet from total destruction? Well, what I can tell you, Mick, is they've already said those words, and they haven't been shy about using those words. They've been saying for literally 150 years that the Earth cannot sustain a human population where it's at. That's right. Even back when there were less than 1 billion people, these eugenicist, anti-human, elitist scumbags were saying we need to reduce the population. Well, here we are, and they're still saying it. They just won't say these words in the same sentence. We need the human population to be reduced. So take this untested, unverified, unsafe and ineffective Jim Jones juice, and we'll talk to you in a year or two, see how you're doing. Right? They're telling us that the population's too high, and they're telling us that we need to do something different. And if cow farts are bad, killing Mother Earth, what are human farts doing? Right? They want to tax your movement and your ability to travel, right, with carbon taxes, because, that really makes sense. Carbon taxes. They've been developing it, though. They've been developing these ideas for 30 years. And before they had these ideas in the public, they were talking about them privately. That's right, folks. The green environmentalist movement, it wasn't started one day and it just came out of Al Gore's mouth suddenly. Al Gore had been thinking that a long time. It had been in the process. And the people that would spout off environmental horseshit the way Al Gore did as vice president, they had to be taught that crap through school, through college, indoctrinated with it. And then someone with money had to introduce the idea to Al Gore and say, hey, Al Gore, look at this. We got an environmental problem over here. No, don't pay attention to the facts. Just believe me, there's an environmental problem. And the solution is to tax people and to change their lives and to hurt them because we don't give a shit about them. Anyways, it took a long time and they're still working on their little plan. So if, and this is a call back, this is called a circle back, Jen Psaki. Pay attention, you dumb wench. We're going to circle back. They want the population to be reduced. They're telling us they want it to be reduced. This isn't a new idea. And so they've been planning it and working on it and taking the steps they need to take for decades. And we've discussed how, right? People like Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates have met, sat on a stage with microphones and lights shining on them for the audience to listen to them talking about population reduction and pandemics and how you control population and pandemics and how you control population and food issues and fertilizer issues. Oh, we can't have that fertilizer. It's bad stuff. I think that fertilizer is what makes your food, you jackasses, but they don't care. Because the rich, the super rich, these people, they'll never go without a meal. They'll always have any food they want available for them at any time. That's not going to change anytime soon, folks. So what do they care? They've got more money than brains. There's really nothing they can't have that they don't want. The only thing they can't have that they truly want, that they can't have, is control over your mind. To control every individual, every human being on the planet. To control their movement. To dictate their lives. To control their thoughts. That's what they want. Not just to control money, not just to control the banks, they already have that. Not just to control the government, they already have that. Not to have all the jets and the yachts and the mansions and the real estate, they have that. To control all of the banking system, they have that. They want to control you and take your life away from you. That's what they need so that they can feel better. Truly, folks, these are some sick, sick bastards. Let's do this. Let's move on and see what else you guys want to talk about as we move closer and closer and closer to 2023. And you can always recall, folks, that you heard it here on this channel, the shit that's coming. Man checks in and says the electricity mob is in a battle with the fossil fuel mob. While there is crossover and cooperation, one seems to be harder trying to push out the other. Yeah, you bet. They all want dominance. Now, this is where you look at one bastard and you realize that he's fighting this other bastard, and it is you and I that get to suffer. Apparently, because of this storm that came through, polar vortex, a.k.a. cold snap, Arctic weather, happens just about every winter, sometimes more or worse and sometimes less. Now, down south here, we've had some particularly cold days, but, we made it. The world hasn't ended. But Texas took a pretty hard hit, and we've been told it's going to take 2 weeks. 2 weeks for Texas refineries to make up the fuel that they weren't able to create while the storms were here. 2 weeks. Am I going to blame the refineries? Am I going to blame Governor Abbott? Am I going to blame President Biden? Interesting. But yeah, the fossil fuel mob, what about, all of that green energy out there, right? The windmills, how did they turn with ice stuck to them? How did those solar panels work when they're coated in snow? Probably not real well. But, it's a religion to these people on the left. They're a cult. As far as I'm concerned, they're also a death cult. They would rather see you go without food and die than to allow a farmer to use his ingenuity, his thoughts, to create more food. They would rather see civilization stagnate and even die off, as long as it saves their precious planet. This is their religion, folks. It is a religion. It is a death cult. It really is. And speaking of death, I want to say, hey, let's take a wild freaking guess. Sponsored by the Jim Jones Juice. There's a particularly sad story about death. On Christmas Day, a 16-year-old suffered multiple strokes and then died. 16-year-old. Was this kid some out of shape couch potato? No, he was a hockey player. 16-year-old hockey player suffered multiple strokes. How the hell do you think a 16-year-old started having strokes? Why is it that children are having fucking heart attacks? Because there's a war on children, folks. It's not an agenda. It's a war on them. Unbelievable, right? If they can't sexualize the kids, they want them to die from heart attacks and strokes. The Jim Jones Juice. Now, Florida, folks, and I love Florida, they're investigating the drag queen Christmas show that has been marketed to children. I'd say prosecute them. Well, Florida says that exposing children to sexually explicit activity is a crime. Really? Yeah, it is. Unbelievable, folks. It is absolutely unbelievable what is going on out there. Well, turn the kids into sex toys or just kill them off. They're a death cult, folks. They want everything destroyed. Okay, Jolene, what do we want to talk about next? Who's out there? It's Oregon Patriot. And he says, I see the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the ATF, change the rules on the Glock 80% builds, making all of them illegal. Thoughts? Well, the ATF is a bureaucracy. It is empowered by the legislative branch, right? It was created. It's a bureaucracy. They don't get to make the law. They don't even really get to interpret the law. But that kind of misnomer has been handed to them. They believe that they get to make rules based on the laws that pass. And let me see if I can explain this. The law, or shall we say statute, because that's a more accurate description. The things that are made by Congress are not laws. We already have the law. It's called the Constitution. It's the law of the land. So they pass statutes. And then the bureaucracy looks at the statute and says, well, they are authorizing us to do A, B, and C. And so in order for us to do A, B, and C, we need to have some bureaucratic rules in place. So they interpret the statute and grant themselves authority or power, if you will. So that's what the ATF does. That's how they can change the rules. The statute creates a spirit or intent. And the rules are what these bureaucracies follow. They change the rules so 80% builds, all of them are illegal. My thoughts? ATF can suck it. I don't have any 80% builds. If I did, I don't know why. I don't understand why I would want to buy or create an 80% build, because anything I want, I can just go buy. Now, that said, there are people who can't buy whole guns because of criminal record or whatever. And then there are people who say, I don't want the government to know that I have anything. Right? I want the government to know that I am an American, that I am free, that I have a Second Amendment right, that I believe in my life, but I believe in my liberty more strongly. What is my life without liberty? What do you value more, your life or your liberty? Because if you value your life more, then you'd be willing to sacrifice your liberty. But if you value liberty most, then you're willing to sacrifice your life. That is something that people in the military do. They're there to defend America, defend their family, defend liberty. So they're willing to put themselves in a position where they train to fight and defend life of others and liberty for all. Anyways, the ATF, they're a completely worthless and corrupt institution. They are. They do want to, however, stop people from having freedom and liberty. Read the Second Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And as far as I'm concerned, whether a weapon is made 100% in a factory or 90% or 85 or 80%, I don't give a shit. You ought to be able to buy what you want because it is your right and it shall not be infringed. But John, there's criminals. So who do we have criminals? Who are the biggest criminals on the planet? The guy down the street from you? The guy on the other side of the railroad tracks? Or the biggest criminals on the planet are in charge of governments like Zelensky? And for everyone who hates Putin, Putin's the biggest criminal on the planet. Okay, he's government too. Yeah, that's right. Governments are the corrupt ones, not us. They're the biggest criminals. They're the ones who should have guns taken away from them unless they can prove, demonstrate, offer evidence that they're not corrupt. They're not innocent until proven guilty in my book. No, they're guilty until they prove themselves innocent. The government doesn't have the protections of the Constitution. The government is supposed to obey the Constitution. And I'm back up on my soapbox. All right, we're coming to the end of it. We're coming down to the wire on this wacky Wednesday. And you heard it here, folks. You heard it here first. We've got one more topic to cover. Jolene's putting it up there. It's from the Charlanator. Let's get through this. Let's see what's happening, and then we'll move on with our lives. But, of course, I'll be back in the morning, right, with, you guessed it, 0 Dark 30. And don't forget, I need you to share this internet address. I need you to hit subscribe on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube and you want to help the movement, you want to help things, and, well, put yourself in a better position to receive information, join the preparedmind.club. Now, we got the Charlene. She says, anybody else think it's interesting in timing that the movie Oppenheimer is being released this summer? Who's Oppenheimer? Well, he would be the guy that invented the nuclear weapon, right? The atomic weapon, rather, I should say. I got to be careful. There's going to be people out there, hey, right? The same people would pick on me for calling the initial weapons made by Oppenheimer nuclear, right? They're the same idiots who run around saying, we live in a democracy. Yeah, okay. Anyways, interesting timing, Oppenheimer, predictive programming, getting the thoughts about atomic and nuclear war and nuclear weapons and atomic weapons out there, the mental vision of the mushroom cloud. That seriously changed the world, folks. Seriously changed the world. The creation of super weapons. Yeah, I don't. There are no coincidences, Charlanator. There just aren't. There's no coincidences. The movie's coming out. There's a very specific purpose behind it. They want everyone to understand what the weapons were created for, who created them. It's going to be propaganda. I'm sure it'll have some history in there, but, you know, it just is. It just is. You know, it just is. And I'm going to end it with this. The people in charge are a bunch of hypocrites and liars and pieces of crap. Potato Joe, Asshole Joe, Gigi Joe, and his wife, Dr. Jill, they celebrated Kwanzaa, right? Which is a holiday that was created by a felon, folks, a violent felon, who apparently tortured 2 naked women. But, you know, that's a holiday he created. So the leaders of the cult of death, the current physical or public leadership, right? President Biden, the White House, the United States government, they're showing us who they are. Are you prepared for what is going to come next? Chance favors the prepared mind. Is yours. Hit subscribe. Share this internet address, and I'll see you at 0 Dark 30. Semper Fi, Godspeed.